restart this. Just give me 2 seconds, guys. Having a little bit issues with my switcher. Let me just restart the switcher. Not sure what happened there, but anyway, welcome. If you're watching live, we're going to be doing some post-processing of your photos today. You can probably hear me a little bit better now. Okay, something happened with the Ninja, that's fine. So unfortunately, let's have a look here. I'll add my face down here. So we're having a few technical issues. Let's just go video source. No. Alright. That is weird. I'll say g'day if you can hear me out there. I'll just double check that we're live here now. Oh, weird. Okay. It says we are definitely live on Restream. So hopefully everything is working. Unfortunately, my system for my camera isn't working. It just all of a sudden when I went to go live, it shut down. So that's a real bugger. But hopefully you can hear me out there. That's the main thing. Get rid of this and you can see the stream. So I hope you're doing awesome. And unfortunately, which is not a bad thing, you're not going to get to see my face today. Which actually isn't a bad thing. So just give me a shout out and let me know you can hear me okay if you're watching live. And we will get started. Just see what's happening here. Anyway, bit of a false start this morning. Always a technical issue. I did test this yesterday. But anyway, you get that on the big jobs. We've got this beautiful photograph here. There's so many. That's such a pain. Well, hopefully you're watching this. Oh, no. There's all these streams went out because I was having all these issues this morning. So I'm very sorry for those who got all the notifications. Hopefully we're up and running now, so that's the main thing. Bugger. Okay. All right. I'm just double checking YouTube because that's the most important place. And what a pain! It just pushed out all these notifications. Okay. All right. Let me go over here to YouTube. Just make sure the stream is still live on YouTube. I apologize for this, guys. I thought we had it all sorted. Yep, it's showing me live now, so that's good. Awesome. Very good. All right, let's get into it. I've got the chat up. Just make sure the chat's working so I can see it there. Coolio. All right, let's get started. And we got the comment come in there, so that's good. Awesome. All right, so we've got this beautiful elephant photo here from a follower called Nolene, and the reason why I'm doing this edit today is because I'll just make sure the voice comes through. Cool. All right, so we're live. So the reason why we're doing this edit today is Nolene shared one of my videos, and one of the things I do if you share one of my videos, I'll reach out to you and just say I will edit one of your photos for you, and Nolene set this one in. So beautiful photograph, love it. Who doesn't love a good elephant? Amazing. I think the capture of this is really, really nice. If we bring up the information here, you can see 1/200th, f8, ISO 100. That all looks good. I would say Possibly, I probably would have looked at just a slightly faster shutter speed, just because, 1/200th, is particularly at 200 mil. I mean, with stabilization, that you can get away with it, there's no doubt, but you're on a really bright day. So, 1/500th, 1/1000th, because you never know if you're traveling along like this on safari or something, and something jumps out at you really fast, you definitely want to be able to capture that and have your shutter speed up fast enough. And these days, our cameras can handle so much ISO and get away with it. So anyway, that's probably one thing. Settings-wise, I would have changed, but I really love that. I think this is a cool shot. All right, so a couple of things I think is possibly, there's this little stick here, and there's this hole up here in the sky that I'm looking at up here, and possibly this, you could probably argue this, are probably more distracting elements than adding to the scene. This one you could argue, maybe not. Definitely this hole in the sky, and definitely this little guy down here, possibly this little thing here on the edge as well. So one thing when you're shooting wildlife like this, you're just going to go and you're just going to take as many frames as you can, and you're not going to be able to have time to do your border patrol, that I always say. So I feel like that's totally fine. And the fact that you've left a bit of room around it to crop it in post, I think is really what this needs. So first off, let's just get this crop right. So I'm thinking possibly, and I want to get rid of that up there as well. And you know what? I'm just going to break the rule here, because he's coming straight down the camera. I feel like we can get rid of and be able to almost center this guy. And it's just powerful because he's looking straight at you. He's coming down the camera. We've cropped out those distracting elements around the outside. So I feel like that's definitely a stronger crop. You can already see already that it's looking really, really good. Actually, did I reset this? So let me just fix that crop again. I think a few of the sliders might have been buggered up. So let's get that right again, that crop. And I feel like the other thing as well is, I'm just looking at that sky at the top. I definitely don't want to include any of that. Getting his eyes on that top third or around that top third, I think, yeah, that's good. I love it. And you can see, there's a tiny little bit in the corner there, but that's looking really good. You can see the sky is a tiny, tiny little bit, which you could probably crop out a little bit more. Just bring it in a little touch more there. Let's go close. Cool. All right. So when I think about my photographs, I think about it like this. I start with light, which is the sort of the basic panel, getting all my global adjustments done. And then I think about color. And then I'll think about localized adjustments. So LCL is a good way to think of it. Light, color, localized adjustments. That's usually the way I work through. So with this one, I think that, and don't be afraid. Look, if you don't know where to start with your photograph and you're in Lightroom, just hit the auto button. Like seriously, it's up there. It's up here. Just hit auto. Like if you don't know it, it'll give you a starting place. It's not going to be perfect, okay? It never is perfect. But it's a starting place, and it's a good place to start. That's what I always recommend you do. Hit the light button, hit the auto button. If you're not sure what to do, just do that for your first thing. That's it. It's all good. It's really fine. Just start with auto. It's usually what I find is it does too much saturation and vibrance, so I usually double click those and that resets those sliders. And this will give you an okay starting place. Now, looking at the histogram, you can see we've got a bit of room probably either side for the white and black points. So white and black point, if you look at the histogram on the left side, you can see if I push that, it's just moving that left side, the blacks, okay? And the opposite is the whites, okay? So if I push the whites, it's just moving this side of the histogram right up on the edge, the right-hand side there. So setting the white and black point just pushes those sliders as far as possible. Now you can hold down Option. Actually, if I hold down Option and then I drag this, you can see if I'm holding down Option and dragging that slider left and right now, when things are seeing black on the screen, that's things turning totally black, okay? And same with whites. If I drag down the whites, you don't really want to see any whites, okay? So somewhere there, because that means that area is blown out, all right? But an easy way to do it is just hold down Shift, double-click white, double-click black, okay? And then Lightroom's going to automatically set those white and black points. It's a really cool thing to do. You can do it manually by holding down Option. I think it might be Alt on Windows, Options on Mac, but yeah. Cool. If you're out there and you want to say hello or you got any questions, please drop them in the chat as we go. More than happy to answer questions along the way. Awesome. So I reckon that's our, like if you look before, after, you can already see we're getting a bit of pop there. We get the colors are starting to come through. Haven't done too much with contrast in that yet. Not too worried about that. All right, so now let's look at color. And white balance, honestly, I think the white balance is fine. I think it's pretty close to what it should be. But say it was looking a little bit blue. There's two things you can do. You can go to auto, but I do find sometimes Lightroom will tend to warm things up too much. Okay, and with all these auto settings, I recommend you try them, and that's totally fine to try them. But what you want to do is you want to tweak them to your liking. Okay, and white balance is a creative choice. So I find that with white balance, you know, you'll get it to what you thought it was, and then you can adjust it and tweak it, you know, creatively. You know, if that makes sense. So white balance is good. I think it's pretty good, but what you can do, eyedropper tool on a white area, you can click that white area, and that'll often give you not a bad starting place. I think somewhere there, that's not bad. You can see it's more of a yellowy tone. That's not a bad starting place. The other things that work in too is daylight, cloudy, shady. Sometimes those presets will get you started with it quite, not a bad looking color too. All right, so something I do to all my photos now, and we're gonna add more contrast. Okay, so we're still looking at global adjustments. So this is still working on color, because contrast is gonna make the color pop as well as, you know, work on the light stuff. So just a little S curve, pulling up in those mid-tone highlights, pulling down in those shadow highlights, and that's looking good. And at the moment, I'm just looking at the background, not too worried about our subject getting dark, okay? Because that's gonna be the L at the end, localized adjustments, okay? So I think that's not a bad start. We're looking good now. I am going to add, one thing you can do is remove chromatic aberration. I won't get into that today, but it's just basically the color fringing. I always tick that on. And if you want to enable the lens correction, which I probably would with this one, it's found it there. You can see it's taken away some of the warping, gets rid of some of any vignetting that you have from a lens. It's not a bad thing to do when you've got wildlife shots. Now, there is times I won't use that if I'm shooting landscapes or anything like that. I won't bother even using that. So I want to embrace sometimes the distortion of the lens, so I won't bother using that. So that's kind of cool. But that's it. So that's all the basics done. So now we're moving more. So color's looking pretty good. Now we're moving more into localized adjustments. So I'm going to go up here to my masking tool here, this one here. Click on that, and then I'm going to go select subject here. Select subject. Cool, and it's done a really good job. That's a pretty decent selection. I'm really, really happy with that. So one thing I want to do with this selection, okay, is I'm going to open up the shadows, because we darken down with a bit of contrast, but I definitely want to open up some of those shadows, okay? So open up the shadows on this boy, can add a little bit of contrast back, and what I'm going to do down here is, if I zoom in a little bit, you can see there's beautiful texture on the skin, okay? We want to enhance that, all right? So I'm not going to go crazy. I'm just going to bring it up a little bit of clarity, a little bit of texture, and you can see just by doing those couple of things, it's just brought the animal to life. Look at the difference there. Ready? To on, off, on, off. Now we are getting a bit of a hot spot up there. Not worried about that. We can deal with that in a minute, okay? So that's looking pretty cool. I'm really, really happy where we're at now. So here's the before, after, before, after. Now, looking at the animal, I still think it's a little bit dark. So I'm going to go down here to the blacks and just open up those. Sorry, not the blacks in the global settings, Johnny. Let's try blacks in our subject selection. Get it right, mate. Yeah, just open up those, just a touch there. I don't want it crazy. You know, you don't want to open up your shadows so it looks something like this, because that does not natural. The light is, he's in shadow on that side, but I just want to see a touch more detail, okay? One thing I love about this, and this is what's Anolene's done really well in camera, is you can see it's got good separation from the background right now. And I think that's really, really nice. I actually love that separation there. That's looking good. All right, so that's cool. But what I am going to do now is, because I am trying to focus in on the animal, I'm going to go down here to effects. I'm going to add my vignette. So I like to, if you're not sure what your vignette slider is going to do, just go crazy on it, okay? And then adjust your midpoint how you want it. Adjust the roundness how you want it. And then I usually feather it right out. And then back it back somewhere to, like, you know, just subtly 10. So I usually like to have a vignette on most of my photos. It helps gives you image depth. If you have a look before, after, before, after. But what it's also doing is it's darkening down those edges and just giving the image a little bit of depth, but it's probably a little bit strong. So somewhere around that 9 to 10 I find is good. So with vignettes, I like them to be subtle. You know, there are times when you're shooting black and white and people use vignettes as a creative choice and make it nice and dark, but in general, you want your vignette to be nice and subtle, okay? So here we go. So this is before, after, before, after. Looking good, looking good. So there's a couple of things now. I can see it's pretty, you know, it's still a fair bit of light down in here, which I think is taking away from our main subject a little bit now. So I'm just gonna go up here and grab a brush tool. And then all I want to do is I'm going to pull down the highlights, pull down the whites, okay? And then I've got a nice big brush here, and I'm just going to paint along this foreground here a little bit. That's all I want to do. I think the flow is turned down there, so let's go up here to flow. Yep, flows down a bit. So often with big brushes like this, you can zoom out, just get along the edges. And because I'm only affecting those highlight sliders, you can see those highlights and whites, it's just pulling those highlights down in the foreground a little bit. That's it, beautiful. So now, before, after, yeah, that's looking pretty good. I'm liking where we're at. Now, there is another eye in here. The eyes are super important, hey? They're like the most important thing to get sharp on a wildlife photograph. So if we go in here, let's grab this. Let's go to the radial gradient here. Had a bit of a mind blank. Let's go on the radial gradient here. Yeah, cool, let's do that. Let's open up the shadows here, and it's not going to be enough, so I'm just going to open up, not crazily, and you're going to say it looks a bit over the top, and that's fine, because we're going to adjust it anyway. So it is in shade. I just want to bring a little tiny bit more attention to it. And you can see now, and the other thing we can do is bump up the whites in that area, and pump up the highlights as well. So you can see super subtle really, before, after, before, after. This might be just a little bit strong. Let's just refine it a little bit there. Let's have a look at that now. Yeah, that's good. See, it's just brought a little bit of life back into that eye, just ever so subtly. So we go before, after. I'll just hide that. Just hide the pins. Let's just go never, just so we can see it at the moment. So before, after. You can see it's just brought a little bit of a light, a tiny little bit of attention to that area. Looking good. All right, so next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to enhance the light of this shot. So let's go before, after. Looking pretty good. So I'm going to zoom way out now, okay? Something crazy like this. And then I'm going to go back into masking. I'm going to hit create, and this time I'm going to create another radial gradient. Okay, so, but this time I'm going to make it really, really big. Actually, now I've got it on never. Let's go auto. Where's my radial gradient? There it is. So I'm going to make it really, really big, and you're probably already guessing what's sort of going on here. So there's naturally light coming in from this direction. Okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to enhance that light a little bit. Okay, so what we can do to enhance that is just a tiny little bit of exposure. I'm going to add just a slight bit more yellow tone, just a little bit yellow coming in that direction, tiny bit of magenta possibly, and let's just have a look. So before, after. That's sort of what I was after, but you can see it's bleeding into the shadows too much. So something really important to do with this one, if I go up here, and you'll see up here we've got subtract. So if I hit subtract, okay, and I'm going to subtract with the luminosity range, and then I'm going to click in those shadow areas, okay, because that's where I don't want this to affect. So naturally the light's coming in from that direction, but I don't want it to affect those shadows. And you can see it's a little bit hot at the moment. We're going to fix that up. Don't stress about that. But we've got this luminosity range now, and you can see this is what the luminosity range is doing. It's saying anything with shadows, don't let that radial filter that I just draw bleed into, okay? And that's gonna really make it look natural. All right, let's have a look. So before, after. Let's just have a look at this radial filter. So before, after. It's probably just a touch strong. So there's two ways we can go and adjust our sliders. We can just grab this this radial gradient, and you've got this feather tool here. sorry, this amount slider here. I'll just show you that. Here, see that amount slider right there? Actually, I'll get the right one. That's better. This amount slider. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to drag that back. It's just like opacity. Okay, I'm just going to pull that back ever so slightly. Yeah, cool. All right, I'm digging that. Now, we have got a bit of a hotspot on there. You can see we've got our highlight indicator warning us in the red area. So I'm going to hit the plus button. I'm going to go back in here to the brush tool. And I'm going to make my brush nice and small now. And I'm going to pull back the highlights, pull back them whites just a little bit. And I'm going to paint across this area here. Okay, I'm just pulling back those highlights just in that area there, where it's a little bit hot on that guy. Cool. So all this is leading to a real subtle edit, okay? I'm liking where we're going with this. I'm liking where it's at. There's still, yeah, I think that's good. Now, one thing I always like to do is go back through and just turn my mask on and off. That's fine. That's pulling that back. That's our bit of extra light coming through into our scene there, like that. That's cool. That's cool. And that's our subject, bringing a bit of light back into there. Yeah, nice. Awesome. What I will do, I just want to take a look at the other eye on the other side. Yeah, that's probably fine. That's okay. And we've got a little bit of a hot spot on the tusk there as well, so we could deal with that if we're worried about it. We'll just go back to our brush here, and we'll just pull that back a little bit as well. Cool. All right. I think that's looking really, really natural. Not a bad looking edit. I am wondering though if we can, well, I do like the enhanced light. I'm not liking exactly what it's doing to this area back here. So what I'm thinking, okay, so let's go back to the masking tool. And this is where localized adjustments are just so good. So I'm going to go down here. I'm going to go select subject, okay? Select subject, and then I'm going to go over to the select subject, and I'm going to invert that. And what that's going to do is then select the background. Cool. So our subject's like cut out now. And then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to bring the exposure down on the background just ever so slightly. And I'm not worried about everywhere. I'm just worried about this top side here, okay? And then what I'm going to do, so I've selected the subject, I've inverted that, now I've selected the background. Now I've just darkened down the background. What we could try, let's just try some highlights maybe. Yeah, that's not bad, but I do think it needs a little bit darkening. Okay, and then didn't want it all dark. It was just mainly this top area I was looking at. So I've darkened that down now. We've got our subject selection here. If I hold down options, this turns into intersect, okay? And if I click intersect, I'm going to intersect with a linear gradient, okay? And then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to pull down that background there a little bit. So that adjustment we made now is just affecting this background area. So if I was to turn it off and on, not affecting our subject, just affecting our background area. And then, you know, we can lessen the amount if we think it's too much. But I think that's good. It's just giving us a little bit more separation between this hill area in the background. And I think that's looking pretty good. I'm liking where we're at. There's good detail on our big fella there. He is contrasty because it's the time of day, you know, like that's the thing. So, so what we might do now, I've got a couple of ideas. I think this is going to make a ripper black and white. But first, I'm just going to chuck it over in Photoshop quickly. So we'll get that done. There's a little bit of a cleanup, I think. So first thing in Photoshop is Command-J or Control-J if you're on Mac. You're going to duplicate that layer down there. Don't worry about all this stuff you can see on the screen. Looks confusing, I know. And then we're going to go over here to this removal tool. Absolutely love this tool. This tool here, removal tool. Love this. Now, there's a couple of things, you know, I'm quite particular about... you know, this looks like clumps of elephant poo on the ground, which is fine. It's probably realistic. And you may not want to worry about things like this. But I'm one, I like to simplify things. I like things clean. I like really simple compositions. It's just simple compositions. I just love it because there's very minimal distractions. You know, it's all about the main subject. And I mean, that rock's fine there. And you might think, Johnny, you're being a bit pedantic. And that's totally fine as well. If you're not in this same frame of mind, realize moving these things is just a creative choice. It's not necessarily something everyone should do. But I particularly, I just like less distracting elements. I'm a big fan of less is more. And I'll show you what I'm talking about now. That's looking pretty good. I'm liking that. And you can see the removal tool does a really great job with this. Yeah, cool. All right, so let's have a look before, after, before, after. You can see, you know, you could argue they should have stayed there. For me, I just like to remove those things. So I'm going to hit save. If you're out there watching, say hello. If you've got any questions, please also say hello. Awesome. Very good. And we did have some trouble starting up this morning, so if you're watching this after the fact and you're wondering why we got all these crazy notifications, I do apologize. We definitely had some issues starting up this morning, so thanks for everyone's patience. A few technical issues. All right, so we saved that back, and now we've got our nice clean version here. So what I'm going to do, I don't mind that. I think that's not a bad edit. I think that's pretty good. So anyway, here's the with the distracting elements, without. I think it just looks a bit cleaner to me. I really like where that goes. Here's the before, here's the after. Righto, I think it was good. Got some good light, looking good. But I think what we need to do now is right-click that new layer, and I'm going to go create virtual copy. Now, the beautiful thing about virtual copy in Lightroom, it's non-destructive and it doesn't take up any more space. It's not duplicating the raw file or anything like that. It just basically makes a copy inside of Lightroom in the catalog, so which is really nice. But it allows us to now go and edit this a different way. Okay, so I think if you, depending on how you were going to print this or whatever, I think this would also work great in a portrait orientation. So let's just do this one in portrait. So I'm going to crop it in portrait there. I think this is actually my favorite crop. I like this one, but I just wanted to do the other one in color, in landscape, just to show the difference. There's no like right or wrong here, but it does mean what we do need to do is re-add our vignette in. Okay. So let's go a bit hard. Let's check our roundness there, set the feather, and then back it right back down now. Cool. Then I'm just going to go to black and white here. Oh yeah, already loving that. So this is monochrome. We say black and white, but it's actually, so this is actually black and white. And then we might even go monochrome. So we might add some color or even duotone, which is two color, like a split tone type effect. Now you can see one thing that's cool about black and white. You can see there is a fair bit of light coming into the foreground here. All right, so let's try and deal with that with a localized adjustment. So I'm just going to grab a linear gradient here. Okay, and then I'm just going to pull the highlights back down there. And then I might just play with the whites a little bit as well. Yeah, cool. All right, so you can see what that's done. It's just taken that emphasis off the ground. And maybe that's something we need to go back and do for our color version as well. But at the moment, I'm liking where that's at. I'm liking our vignette. This is what I was saying. You can see my vignette. I've gone a bit stronger. You can see it's on 22 even now. So, I mean, that's the thing with black and white. You can get away with a little bit stronger vignette. So I think that's nice. I like all the localized adjustments we've done on our elephant now. I think what we can do is play around with our color toning, okay? So there is this black and white area, and this is kind of interesting as well. You've got this targeted adjustment. You can click on things and drag things down and pull things up. Now this is targeting to a certain color, but it's also affecting everything in that color range. So you're not having any adjustment. So I can't just affect the yellows in this top left corner. It's affecting, you can see here, it's affected the yellows throughout the scene. So I'm going to undo that. So that is a cool area. You know, if you've got a nice blue sky and then you turn it to black and white, you can grab that and pull the blues down, and it makes your clouds pop a fair bit, which is kind of cool. So I think that's all right. But what I'm looking at is the grading tool here. So really like this. So if you hold down the shift key, first thing I'm going to do is click over here, hold down the shift key, and then I can drag this around to a color I'm thinking, okay? Somewhere around there. So if you have a look at this, it's just basically shadows, midtones, highlights. Then you've got this blending. I probably should bring up the little thing so you can see. So you've got your color wheel for your shadows, and then your midtones, and then your highlights, and then you've got two sliders here, blending and balance. So blending is the blending between the three different colors, how they blend into each other so they can blend less or more, and balance gives one dominant to the highlights or the shadows or the midtones, depending on which way you slide it. So that's balance, but we'll get into that in a little bit. And it's raining out there, so I apologize if you can hear that in the background. So let's have a look here. So I'm thinking, so again, if I hold down shift, it allows me to pull anywhere around here to choose my color. I'm thinking we go with a more blue sort of look. Now, one thing to think about, if you were going to print this and put it in a certain place in your house, okay, There's a certain tones that might look better. Maybe you've got white walls and black and white is the go. Maybe you've got touches of blue throughout your house or something that's going to work well with blue. So you can see once I select the color with a shift on the outside, the more I drag it down away from the wheel, it makes that color more intensive. So I recommend on the side of, less is more here. So now we've got a monochrome. It's going a little bit to the blue side. Now, if I was to show this balance, if I pull it this way, it's going to make it more blue because it makes everything blue, even the highlights a bit more blue. And this way, it's going to make it get rid of it and turn it back, monochrome again, get rid of it. But if we go up here to the highlights now and do that same thing, go up to shift, and maybe we pull something around. Sorry, we go up here to more of these yellowier tones, and then we drag that back a little bit now. So now what we're getting, if I turn that on and off, before, after, we're getting this cool little split tone effect. Now you can use this slider. This is like exposure, so it brings up the lightness. I don't usually like to do that there, to be honest. But you do have eyedroppers for each one. So you can hit this little eye button there, and that turns the shadows on and off. Now I'm not going to touch the midtones here because I don't want to add another color, and I don't want the midtones to be more dominant. But midtones is really cool. If you've got a color thing, I think midtones is pretty awesome. So let's have a look here. If we go into blending, so we've got, so this is blending more, this is blending less. Okay, so I think somewhere in here is a nice blend. Now balance, if again, this is where you could choose, maybe I want the scene to be more blue, or maybe, for this one, I actually want it to be a little bit more to the yellower side, just a touch more. Like I like the blue shadows, but I want a bit more yellows in it. And I think that looks great for this type of image. So if I was to click on this now, let's go up to full screen, and then I hit Shift Tab, gets rid of all my panels, and then I hit the L button, is lights out, and there's our final photograph. I think that looks pretty good. I'm really happy where that's at. I think that looks great. Now we go back, we can see there's the color version, okay, which I think is still good, but I do like the black and white. And I think the harsh light is what, the color version to me, and there's probably, going back looking at it, it's probably a bit bright still down in here. There's a few more localized adjustments. And now's the time to, when you get your photograph to this point in time, now's the time to walk away and just let it marinate, okay? And just let it sit for a while, because this is the point in time where you come back and you could miss something. You could miss something small, could miss something big, but I feel like this is pretty good. I'm liking where we're at here. So there's our color version. There's our other version. If I go right, actually, if I go left again, so that's our first color version with the distracting elements. And you can see it's just so much cleaner without those the elephant poo there. I'm assuming it's elephant poo. Anyway, that's just a guess. But I think I like this. I like the black and white. I like that sort of duo tone. I call it. It's called duotone, where you're using two different colors. Those yellows in the highlights and the blues in the shadows, and that looks really cool. All right, guys, that's it for this one. I hope you found that helpful. I do apologize for some of the technical issues in the beginning, and particularly all the notifications you would have got. I do apologize. Anyway, I'll put out a little post now and apologize. But yeah. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed that. As always, thank you so much for watching and all your support, and even through the technical difficulties we had this morning. But I'll see you in the next one. Stay inspired and keep creating. Peace.